In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make this really cute little Easter bunny. He's got a hook on the back, so you can hang him on your door or on your wall. He's got bendy ears because I put florist wire inside there, so you can maneuver them into any position you like. And I've used googly eyes, but you could, if you wanted to, sew buttons on there if you wanted to make it a little bit more secure, or even use French knots. And he's all made out of felt, and felt is a wonderful fabric to work with because it doesn't fray, so there's no turning inside out and there's no hemming on this. And you could maybe even use pinking shears to give more of a fluffy effect around the edge. So here's what you need to make him. Let's get sewing. So I've cut out all of my pattern pieces and you can see the way that it's going to go together. So I've got two of the body pieces, and then the face sits over the top. There's his forehead, his nose, and little cheeks there as well. And then for the ears, I'm going to put a running stitch around the inner ear like I have done on this one. That one's already finished, and the same on the paws. So let's do a little bit of hand sewing first of all. So I'm just using a crochet thread. You could, if you wanted to, use embroidery thread. You could machine sew if you wanted to. You don't have to hand sew these. And on the other hand, you could hand sew the whole thing. I like hand sewing like this. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. I'm not worried about my stitches being exactly the same length or perfectly straight. And given more time, it might be quite nice to use different types of stitches. So I could, instead of a running stitch, have used a blanket stitch. I could maybe add some lazy daisies and cross stitches to rabbit's tummy maybe. Make little hearts out of your lazy daisy stitches. But just for speed's sake, I'm just going to use a running stitch. So my stitches are around about 1/4 inch in length, but again, I'm not too worried about them being perfect. So I just finish off with a knot at the back, and then we'll sew the ears together. Okay, so I'm just going to use a straight stitch, and again from the top, but I'm not going to sew across the straight side. Stop with the needle down when I get to the top, just take those threads away. And back down again. And if you need to, you can trim back the edges of the felt just to make sure that they're both the same. So I have two ears like so, and I'm using a florist wire. You could, if you wanted to, use a there you go, chenille stick or pipe clean as we used to call them, but I'm just going to bend this in half and push it inside the ear right up to the point. And then it'll stay in shape. And the same with this one. In it goes. Okay, we'll put those to one side for a second. I've already sewn the pads onto the feet in the same way, and that one's finished. That's got a little bit of padding inside it. So this is how we're going to do that. So put the two pieces together, but I'm going to leave a little gap so that I can get some stuffing in there. So keeping the stitches nice and straight as we go around the curve. There's my gap. Again, I need to trim a little bit of this back again. The felt seems to have slipped a little as I was sewing. That's fine. And then you're going to take a small amount of toy filler. Don't put too much in there to make the feet too fat, because it'll make the stitches around the edge go wavy. So we just want a tiny amount just to give it a little bit of padding. And then flatten out where that hole was, and we're just going to sew the hole closed. Okay, just cut off the end of the threads to make that neat. Right, there's my 2 feet. Oops, one more thread. So now we'll move on to the face. Now you can hand sew all of this if you wish. So I'd maybe again use the blanket stitch around the edge, or a running stitch, but just for speed's sake again I'm going to sew it on the sewing machine. So I'm going to sew them in layers. So the forehead goes on first, just on the point down here, don't sew around the top. Then I'm going to sew on the cheeks, and then I'm going to sew the nose on in the centre. So there's the little face almost finished. I'm going to put some little French knots on the cheeks for whiskers. So just mark 3 dots in a triangle, and then take some more of your embroidery thread, little knot in the bottom, bring the needle up behind the mark, make a tiny stitch almost on top of itself, but don't pull the needle through. Then you're going to wrap this around 3 times and pull through, and you'll have a tiny knot. Go back in your work just at the side of the knot and come out again on the second mark and do the same again. So tiny stitch, wrap the end of the thread around 3 times, pull through, and again with the final mark. You could do this for eyes as well. 1, 2, 3. Back inside, and then straight over to the other side without cutting the thread. So there's the little whiskers finished. Then I'm going to put the eyes on, and you'll probably find this easier if you use tweezers to hold them in place. So a strong wet glue, and just put a tiny dot of glue on the back of the eye. Now it's coming to life. There we go. Now remember, this isn't a toy, because those little eyes will come off if they're pulled. So if you're going to make this for a child, then just make sure that you're using either safety eyes like you'd use on teddy bears, or sewing buttons really firmly on there. Another little thing that I'm going to do is to use a fabric pen, and I'm just going to very lightly colour the sides of his cheeks, just to make them a little bit pink. So I'm just very lightly putting that over the top of the felt. Don't go drawing on that with the end of the pen, because you'll get a very hard line, but that makes it quite soft. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is put the face over the body. You could use a little spray adhesive if you wanted to, and the ears are going to go inside the 2 body parts. So I'm going to sew those in place now. Now remember, I've got wire sticking out of here, so I don't want to break needles or anything. So I'm just going to sew very carefully as I go over the wire. bit like sewing over pins. You probably won't do any damage. The worst thing is you could break your needle. So that's those just sewn in place. And then the second part of the body goes over the top. And I'm going to sew all the way around the edge, but leave a gap in the bottom here so I can get some stuffing inside there. You could pin these if you wanted to, but felt tends to stick to itself, so it's quite easy to sew without pinning. And around the face. Over the top of the head. It's been quite noisy now because there's quite a few layers of felt there. And back around the body. Snip my threads again. Okay, let's just tidy this up a little bit. I'm going to trim this back again just to make it neat. And then we'll put some more toy filler inside the body. And again, I don't want him to be overly stuffed. So nice and round, but not too plump, this rabbit. Just put small bits of stuffing in at a time. You'll find if you put one big lump of stuffing inside anything that you're stuffing, you'll have one big lump of stuffing. So be patient and put little pieces in, and you'll find that your stuffing's even. And when you're happy with the amount of stuffing that you have in there, we're just going to sew across the bottom to close that hole on our sewing machine. Almost finished. So the rest of it's all gluing. Now I'm using a Goodman HT2 glue, which is a really strong fabric glue, and particularly with the felt, with it being fibrous, when you glue two pieces together, they really do bond. And that's really important because we don't want it coming apart. So I'm going to glue on the feet just at the bottom here. If you prefer, you can hand sew them on. I don't see anything wrong in using a bit of glue though. It's quicker and just as strong. And this actually dries very quickly as well. So a nice big dollop. And then we'll have one foot here. The other one goes on the opposite side there. And then for the flowers this time, well, I'm going to do a bow first of all. So let's give them a nice bow tie. And again, I'm going to glue this on. Let's just trim the end of this off. And this one. And I'm just going to glue that to one side. Like so. And then we can add some flowers. Now you can buy individual silk flowers or paper flowers. You could make your own out of felt if you wanted to. I've got lots of these flower kind of decorations around the home. So I borrowed some. And I was going to do a little bouquet, but I think one is going to be fine. And I actually think, no, we'll go for the pink one because it matches. And I've also got some leaves here, so let's pull those off. And we can have a leaf behind there as well. So let's glue the leaf on first. And again, these can all be hand sewn on if you prefer. Nice big dollop of glue on that one. Right, then when that's dry, I'm just going to arrange that bow so I can see it a bit more. That's better. So normally leave that to dry, and that wouldn't actually take very long. Then we're going to turn our bunny over, tidy up my threads again. And I've got a little pom-pom. I'm going to glue on his bottom for a bobtail. And then we'll need a piece of ribbon for hanging. So wrap this over into a loop. And again, I'm going to glue. So I'll glue the two pieces of ribbon, or the two ends of the ribbon together first of all. And then this is going to sit just at the back of the head here, just in between the ears. A little bit more glue on there. And then the final touch, I'm going to add a little button just to the back, just to make it nice and tidy. I know this is the back, but you may be hanging this in a window where somebody sees the back of your rabbit. So let's take a little button. I'm going to just put some thread through the button because I'm gluing it again. Don't want to make it look as though it's been sewn on. So let's tie that in a knot. Snip off the ends. And then again a little dot of glue on the back, and that's going to sit just at the fold of the button there. And I think that's just a nice little finishing touch, keeps it nice and neat. So there's my rabbit finished. So you could really have some fun with your rabbits. You could make, you could do more hand stitching if you wanted to. These don't have to have so much machine stitching. You could maybe have a little felt heart instead of the flowers. You could add eyelashes and eyebrows if you wanted to, and make them completely individual little personalities. So I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. I hope you enjoy making yours.